Balcones' first ever year-round bourbon was an inspiration. It all had to work together. A blend of carefully selected ingredients, Texas-sized pot stills, and creative people determined to find the absolute best way to usher a new whiskey along. When you discover how it pairs with a meaningful moment, suddenly the feeling of drinking great whiskey becomes a whole lot more.
Welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I know how hard it is for you to look at this face without glasses. Most episodes I've done on this show is without glasses, but I forgot them at home, so I'm stuck looking like this today. Today was an interesting conversation, and it's a long time coming. One of the most iconic whiskey bars in the world, Reserve 101 here in Houston, has changed ownership right before the coronavirus breakdown. One of the most famous bar owners in Houston, Mike Raymond, been on the show, good guy. We've had many drinks together. We have debated and talked and argued, and I really dig him completely as an intellectual. I think he's a world of knowledge in that head of his, and great hair too. He started Reserve 101 like 12 years ago, changed the face of whiskey in Houston. The last few years it's been a little rough, and recently it changed ownership. So today I sit down with Sean Fitz. I think it's Fitzmaurice, but his Facebook page was Fitz. And Jace VanHoozer, who's actually been the GM for Reserve 101 for 12 years and now the new owner. So we sit down and we talk all things Reserve 101. What happened? Why the change in ownership? What's going on? What are you trying to fix? What did you do good, and what are you going to do better? We have a completely candid conversation, and before we get to that conversation, I want to give you that warning that we have a candid conversation. This industry is so opposed to having honest conversations because it causes controversy. Even going as far as accusing those of having honest conversations as gossiping. We're not gossiping. Everything said here is firsthand. We all know what we're talking about because we experienced it firsthand, and we just want to know what's going on. So, new ownership, new direction. Lots of things discussed in this episode, and I hope that you understand that it is a conversation that has already been had behind closed doors, in secret, between people in person for over several years now, and the only difference now is it's on camera. So this is not an episode of us bashing anybody. It's just an honest conversation as to what happened. So before we get too far down the rabbit hole of disclaimers, this week's episode is supported by Glass Rev Imports and Amrut Distilleries. Amrut crafts one of the most award-winning Indian single malts to the exact same standards as Scotch, and Amrut Fusion also received the Double Gold Blind and scored a jaw-dropping 96 points by judges at the Proof Awards. Amrut Single Malt Whisky is widely available across America and can be found almost everywhere in Texas. Go out and get a bottle today. So, without further ado, we also talk about this baby right here. Jack Daniel's Rye is arguably in the conversation of one other rye is the best currently available rye on the market. It's absolutely fantastic. They Reserve 101 before the ownership change. Mike picked a barrel, and this is that barrel that was released this past week. It's released at 4 area Houston locations. You can go to Reserve 101's Instagram account and check it out and find out where to buy a bottle. It's absolutely fantastic. They're not a sponsor of the show. They didn't give me any money for this. I'm just telling you, it's absolutely delicious and worth every penny. So, Tony K's, Ryan's Liquor in Spring, First Sip Liquor in LaPorte, and M&R Vantage Park in Cypress, near the Cypress area. You can look it up online. Without further ado, Sean Fitz. Does he want me to say Fitzmaurice? I'm going to say Sean Fitz and Jace VanHoozer. absolutely fantastic guys, great honest conversation. I really cannot wait to see what's coming to that place in the future months once we can get back to that place. Everything's on lockdown right now. Anyways, cheers, guys. So Michelle Solomon, she was the very first vendor I talked to about getting the Whiskey Social started. Mm-hmm. And she may take offense to this, which is very likely possible, but I think she was more in the earlier stages of her being at the distributor. Like, she wasn't quite comfortable, but she did her best to help me. And whereas anyone who's been in this industry long enough avoided me like the plague, because there's all these horrible events, and some new guy you've never heard of is like, hey, I want to start a whiskey festival. Yeah. The feedback, it took even to this day, even with hard numbers to present, because that's the great thing about the position you guys are in. All of your numbers are reported. Mm-hmm. Sure. And so you've got this,
the good, the bad,
I've
the
said
ugly.
this 1,000 times. Some suppliers, some sales reps would rather deal with a tyrannical asshole of a bar owner versus anyone they can't track, right? Because then it's all imaginary numbers at that point. So it was a real uphill battle, but Michelle Solomon was the first person that was really on board, and then she came to work for me at the social, and she went on to work for to Sazerac. She actually used me on her resume, and couldn't be a bigger fan of her. So,
speaking of that, first of all, I want to congratulate you guys on what you guys have been doing. We're kind of the mentality of we just love anybody that puts a spotlight on whiskey in the Houston area or Texas.
Sure.
I'm interested, not to flip it and interview you guys, but I'm interested in, how did the Whiskey Social for you get started?
Interesting. I didn't expect this. So 5 years ago, I had this idea. So me and this buddy of mine were going to all of these events: Whiskeys of the World, the Whiskey Extravaganza, mm-hmm. Houston Whiskey Festival, mm-hmm. which doesn't exist anymore. Good riddance, because that guy was a real asshole. But the events were great. We had, as a consumer, we loved it, but we kept seeing that brands were not coming anymore. Right. And once you look into that format of those events, you realize there's a lot of holes that you can fill. So I reached out to all of the suppliers, didn't charge them the first year, and lost my shirt. I mean, we lost something like, I want to say, I personally lost $7,000, and this guy, so I had this idea to do a dinner, 20 people, grew to 50 people, and then we thought, why don't we just do an event? Mm-hmm. And I asked my buddy to help me. We went in on it 70-30, and we lost our shirts the first year, but the event itself, both vendors and the consumers were very, very happy. Then HBS gets created. I joined within the first week, and we start promoting the group at my events. Okay. And the group just starts filling. At that point, these groups weren't massive. There weren't a lot of these groups all over the U.S.
Right.
So, and there was actually a Houston-based group that was at 90-something people, and that was the original Houston group. So I started promoting HBS at all my events, and I added all my supplier friends from the event to the group, and the group just exploded.
And that was, 4 or 5 years ago?
2000. So the social was started in 2015. The HBS was started, I want to say, December 4th, 2015. So a few 5-6 months after the social was created and promoted, and we started filling that, then HBS took off.
Okay. It's really snowballed, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, it snowballed, and we basically, one of the holes I was trying to fill for the event was no event had any actual tangible ROI. You couldn't prove you were selling anything for these brands.
Right.
So I fixed that problem. I started buying a barrel, and I can't say that I'm going to do this in perpetuity. I can speak about it in the past because of TVC, but we basically started giving away free product that was worked into the price of the ticket. That was already cheaper than the other events' tickets.
Sure.
So we could give away bottles on their way out but we couldn't advertise we're going to give away the bottles. So
Right.
the first year was a surprise. The second year was an expectation. So we didn't have to advertise it. So we're not breaking any laws. They bought a ticket. They got surprised with something when they left. And last year, we gave away 800 bottles of booze that we paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also, the night of, one of the holes for these events is no one was selling anything because you can't legally sell anything. But a
Right.
transaction's not actually completed until they get the bottle. So you could take money, you could take orders, then they could pick it up in store. Just like Total Wine, you go to your phone right now, you can order something, go
Right.
pick it up. So we solved those two problems, and it took off. The event took off. All of a sudden we had a tangible ROI. We effectively, as far as brands are concerned, we effectively sold something close to $44,000 in one night last year.
Wow.
Which, if you were to, and you're talking about by the bottle.
Right.
Sure.
So the thing that was kind of an uphill battle for, historically we've been enemies. Not you guys and me personally.
Sure.
But there's been this weighted comparison between suppliers of, do I want to deal with the online community and them being assholes, or do I want to just deal with a bar in which I can actually track what they do? The problem is your tracking is your nets or your sales, your gross sales,
Gross.
right? Not so you guys for sure. And I have this argument with Kristopher a lot. For sure, when a brand wants to build a brand, you guys are the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
If that brand is a $20 bottle of bourbon, right, or a $25 bottle of bourbon, because then you guys can move through. If it's on the menu and it's in your bar, you guys are selling, let's say, a few cases a week. You look at that for the year, it's like, holy crap, you know.
It's a volume play.
Right. I think we looked at Poison Girl sales annually last year in comparison to Reserve 101 in a discussion over legacy in the Houston area, and it was very comparable.
Yeah, I think so too.
Which I want to get to. I'm so excited to find out. I have just one simple question: what happened? But so we'll get to it, and we can
Okay,
cut those things out.
Let's pour some of this before we have that conversation.
So let's start with the Four Roses since we're on
Sure.
the subject. But anyway, so I think what happened, at least my plight, is if you're a consumer in the group. Let me back up. If you are a supplier in the group, we would post these things because no one knew.
Mm-hmm.
Suppliers didn't know what the group was doing.
Sure.
So last year we actually posted, the group had pre-spoken for 1,500 cases.
Right.
300 were delayed. As you know, O&D is a nightmare. Stuff came in at the beginning of the year. So we actually sold and moved 1,200 cases, almost 10,000 bottles last year as a group.
Right.
That would not have come in if it wasn't for the group. And it wasn't to brag about the group. It was to let the industry who's in the group lurking know, hey, we can prove the group is doing as much revenue as a bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a viable avenue.
But even more so, a good, healthy bar with no food is doing $600,000 a year, $750,000, $750,000 gross.
Mm-hmm.
Our 10,000 bottles, our number was, I think, 639,000 is what we moved in retail sales.
Right.
If those were bar numbers, it would have been 3 to 5 times that. So
With no brick and mortar, no overhead that we carry.
No overhead,
no overhead
anything.
whatsoever,
Yeah.
and I don't make any money on those barrels
Right.
we do. But it would have been basically a $3.5 million bar
Right.
for a Facebook group. So
Which is super impressive.
And we have
Yeah.
no power, right? So we have no back bar, we have no menu. So
Well, that's debatable.
I would disagree about the power part.
but we just
If you think we don't flow within
Yeah.
Sure.
and see what you guys are talking about, it's definitely a temperature check for us of what are people loving right now, what are people not loving, whether we agree with it or not.
At the beginning, it was a sales pitch of saying, like, this is the only place, and it still is, the only place that all 4 tiers can communicate and give feedback. It's a focus group for you to really find out what people like.
For sure.
Also, what they don't like, and that's where it becomes a complete nightmare. Because they're behind a keyboard, they're saying all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'll be honest with you. So I like Mike Raymond. We're definitely on good terms, but Reserve 101 kind of burned a bridge with the group a few years back after he did a podcast just shitting all over to get bottle shares, getting together. He left the group quickly after, and me and him have talked since. He's been on the show a couple times. I understand Mike, but it has always been this uphill struggle of trying to, even Eric Sandler. I love Eric Sandler, but this industry tends to cannibalize itself, meaning if you work at the distributor and a supplier is looking for a new sales rep, they'll go to the distributor.
Mm-hmm.
So they're taking their distributor mentality with them.
Right.
I'm not going to say who. They paid for a menu placement that was crazy expensive as opposed to coming to the Whiskey Social, because their mentality is we can track volume. And what we tried to do was so new and so out of the box that it's kind of hard to present everything without coming off as bragging. Like we were only posting numbers so that the industry knew, but the consumers who have no idea why we would took it as an ego thing. Like,
right.
Well, HBS is this big Goliath. We are, but it's really trying to be as transparent as possible so that we can all work together. If we work together with the bars, Sean Beck has learned more than anybody, like, this group is worth spending your time with. Morgan Weber, I mean, and now you guys have gone out of your way to really connect with the group. So
we knew we had some work to do. We had some making up to do for that reason. I mean,
sure.
It was important that we're all fans at the end of the day, and I think that Sean and I's mentality is that
of whiskey.
Yeah,
in general,
and
we don't care
Sorry,
where
I
it comes.
poured myself one and didn't pour you guys one.
Was that
That's
subliminal?
HBS mentality.
We're a fan of whiskey, so let's
Here,
drink some.
I'll pass it over to you.
But it's more important for us to be.
That was low key, me knocking you down a peg. Yeah.
It's more important for us to be part of the whiskey, not just whiskey, but the bar industry. And the Houston bar industry is on the map, and it's up there with the LAs and the New Yorks.
Oh, for sure.
That's the goal.
And Reserve 101.
Exactly.
Top 50 bars in the U.S. In the world, I think one of the menus or magazines.
And we're way more interested in elevating the culture of the Houston nightlife, the bar industry, the whiskey industry, than we are about being number one in our spot. And I think that's probably one of the main differences between the old regime and the new regime is that we are all inclusive, and we want to know what people are drinking. We want to know what people like. We want to know what people don't.
We want to drink it with them.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be part of a conversation. We're much more akin to having whiskey chats than whiskey debates. I mean, we love a good story, and we like to learn as much as we like to teach, and that's kind of the mentality that Reserve has had for a long time. We try to take a lot of the pretentiousness out of whiskey. I mean, it was kind of one of those deals where before whiskey hit that boom, there were so many people that were screaming from the rafters that whiskey is where it's at, whiskey is where it's at. Nobody listened and nobody cared. But now that it's blown up the way it is, those same people are hoarding their bottles going, this is mine, whiskey is mine, you don't get to share in my secret anymore. And so we try to find the balance between...
I struggle with that all the time.
Yeah.
It's like the band that like you were a super fan of that nobody knew about, and then all of a sudden
remember
band,
when Green Day was cool? And then remember when it was not? It was 10 years. It was 1995, Green Day was the shit. 2005, it was a emo band of teenage girls, and I mean, it's so amazing how you love something and the moment it becomes mainstream, which is a mentality you should always buck,
right?
Because it's stupid.
It's great, good. Put more spotlight on it.
You can like something that other people like.
Sure, or more recently, like you look at Black Keys. You look at Black Keys; they were great.
I still think they're great.
I still think they're great too.
I still like them too.
But like I remember seeing them at I want to say House of Blues. I might be wrong, but it was just two guys and a drum set sitting in the corner, and now they're on like Kia commercials, and now all of a sudden it's
sellouts.
Cool
yeah, well, you still make great music, so what are we talking about here? To kind of second on what he was saying is, and you brought up Eric, like we had a conversation with Eric when we were lucky enough to take this space over, and a lot of the conversation was like, so what are you guys doing to the physical building? And that was, did new copper bar top and new paint on the walls and all that. And our mentality is we don't really care what the building looks like. It's hallowed grounds for whiskey, I think.
I agree. Poison Girl has that same mentality.
Right.
It doesn't need to be this bougie thing.
Right. But I think what's way more important than the color of the paint on the walls is the culture inside of it.
100%.
And
the community would agree with you. And
that's what we're banking on, and that's what we've seen. And kind of the mentality that was in the past was we built this place and you're lucky to be here, and we're of the mentality that like we took over this place and we're lucky to have you. So it's just kind of a difference of opinions.
So I think part of it is I used to wait tables, I used to bartend. I've been in bars my whole life. I think people forget that sometimes, that I used to work in this industry. and my mom has owned bars my entire life. I'm not an outsider, and one thing that we all love to do, anyone that works in customer service, is complain about the tropes of certain types of customers. The pompous, the arrogant, the guy that's like, whiskey's for a man, give me 3 ice cubes and half a gallon of water to go with that one shot.
Sure.
So I think part of the downfall part of the frustration has been in the online platform, you get to see all of your worst nightmares in the consumer world, and so you like to write off the entire thing as a waste of time.
Sure.
It's something that you have to actively buck in order to progress. Poison Girl, Brian Wayne has said many times, I know for a fact, he only joined Facebook to join HBS, and he is a great example of someone who's been a part of the whiskey community since the start and has done everything he can to sees the value in it.
And if we're talking go ahead.
Well, the thing that drives me nuts is during this pandemic, HBS has raised $12,000 for bartenders. The same people who complain about the group are the ones that are virtually tipping you to help keep all of your waiters and bartenders. So and when that happened, I thought, we deserve a bit more patience. I'm not saying we deserve respect. I'm not saying we're hot shit. I'm saying we deserve patience and
acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement. I don't need the acknowledgement. Just a little patience would be great because there is something great, and some people see it and some people don't. But
not the gold star acknowledgement, but more the acknowledgement of like, man, we are to some degree we are all in this together.
Yeah,
100%. And we love you guys. I mean this. I'm rambling about it. Anyways, my point is, let's go back to Reserve 101. So I don't know how much you can talk about. I'm just going to tell you what I know, and then where it kind of dropped off, and then all of a sudden new owners, and you guys fill in the blanks. Okay.
Sure.
So and correct me on anything I say that's incorrect. Okay. So last time our good friend Mike was here, we had a conversation with Mike over what was going on at Reserve 101. He had left already, I guess. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he.
When was this conversation?
It's quite some time ago.
Okay.
Apparently,
last one I heard was when you guys got into the nuances of Jack Daniels.
Yes, that was probably the episode. It's probably the episode. Yeah.
Okay.
So Mike had said that there was a partnership for Reserve 101, 3 partners. One of them maybe had passed, and there was a time limit as to when or what to do with that third share, or they had to sell all of it. Eric Sandler, I talked to him. Eric said, he goes, hey, don't talk about it on the show. I want to get the scoop. I said, that's fine, Eric. Eric had the conversation with Mike. I didn't listen to the episode. So fast forward, he started Cottonmouth, sorry. And
with Michael Neff.
Yep. And then you guys are the owners. There's a lot of gap to fill. What happened? What's the change? And when are you going to add an actual whiskey menu that's got updated pricing? Wade told me I had to bring it up.
I saw him.
Wade told me he's like, you have to bring up the whiskey menu. And I do have a solution for this.
He's so right.
There are
those QR codes right now that have come up. That's something we definitely want to take advantage of too.
I don't know how much it costs, but I know that there are iPad menus you can get that will have everything updated, so you don't have to keep printing over and over again, which is a nightmare.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me on the menus for Wade specifically, if nothing else. So the way the menus were done, they were done through a graphic design company, and so it was one of those situations where if we needed to change one thing, it had to be emailed, and we'd wait a couple of days, and then it would come back, and then we'd have to print it, and then Mike would have to go over it, and all that time he was still kind of working on the inception of Cottonmouth, so it was kind of hush-hush at that point, so he was stretched very thin. And unfortunately, it was just he was in a position to where he was the one doing all that, and that was just kind of how it was. And so we couldn't alleviate some of the things on his plate by taking over those. And sadly, as we're discussing, we kind of got lambasted for it a little bit, as we should. I mean, it's one of those things. We've prided ourselves on being, one of the original whiskey bars in Houston and forging that reputation.
I've said it from the very beginning. 10 years ago, whiskey wasn't really a thing in Houston, and I give full due credit to Reserve 101 for being an early pioneer, as well as Poison Girl, Anvil. You guys have really been the early pioneer of changing. And the great thing is all those owners used to actually work in the industry.
Sure.
Right.
So this is a truly talking about changing the culture of the city.
Sure,
100% agree.
Sure, and all credit goes to Mike in the early regimes for building the structure that we have now. I mean, it was, he was the only one saying whiskey was cool for a while, and then his idea and his dream kind of came to fruition, and it became the jump off point for a long time. And I think that Reserve struggled with not evolving with the times, not keeping up with a lot of the stuff. We ended up kind of being a whiskey museum at times. We had bottles that were hard to find, but we had nothing that had just come out. It was very much a library, if you will.
How long did you guys work there before owning it?
I've been in the gym there for 12 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 13.
Oh, yeah. So
That's what I was
you've been
gonna
around
say.
all the stuff I was talking about. You're very familiar with.
Very familiar.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
But,
lots to say.
Yeah, front row seat. Yes. All that. And Reserve has afforded me a lot of opportunities, and I'm very thankful for it. I'm thankful for everything that the people before us did. I mean, we just got to a point where we felt like they had carried the baton as long as they could, and as far as they could, and it was just, we had ideas, and it's one of those. I mean, you've been in the industry. It's one of those things where you work in a place long enough. The employees are the aficionados, and they're, if I had this place, this is what I would do.
Sure. Everyone has ideas on how to fix what's going on.
And Sean's my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding, and he's worked there off and on for 5 or 6 years in total. Mm-hmm. And I mean, almost every shift we worked together was full of, man, if we could just do that, or if we would just do that. Why is this the way it is? And we finally had an opportunity after a decade. A little over a decade being there to put our thumbprint on it. And
have you guys had this discussion anywhere else yet? The story of this and how it came together?
Very lightly with Eric.
Yeah, very lightly.
Okay, on a show?
He did the online.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
we haven't had this real conversation yet.
So you guys decided. Walk me through the moment you guys. Whose idea was it? We have to buy this place.
His.
Oh. Yeah, but that was years before it was ever for sale.
Yeah. Okay, so you already had it in your mind, and then when it came up, you were like,
he's the business mind, and he was constantly watching for an opportunity, and the opportunity arose. And I was more of I have so many ideas. This would be so cool, only if. And he's like, listen, we can do something.
It's a great partnership because you already know how to run the place.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And then you that's really great.
Before that, I was actually a manager over at Lucky's downtown. Rest in peace.
Right.
But what's funny, a funny story I'll tell you, like my first real interaction with Reserve, and I bartended there for off and on 5 or 6 years, was I would work at Lucky's. And then I'd come over to see Jace, and I'd go sit in the corner of the bar, and at the end of bartending, like the last thing I want to do is talk about work or talk about bars or anything like that. So I'm just sitting there and I'm drinking with him, probably shooting Jack Daniels at the time. And then Mike was trying, like, headhunting me to come over and start working over here. And literally, I would come over there, I would just sit down, we'd have conversations between the two of us. And yes, probably joke about the guy that came in and ordered like a Grey Goose and vodka or whatever, and make fun of that.
Sure.
And then finally, it was probably a year in the courting process that I came and I started working at Reserve as a bartender. And Jace goes, all right, man, we're going to have to start talking about whiskey now. Like, now you need to start learning some of this stuff. And I literally, this is not a joke, I wish it was, and you guys can make fun of me later on, but let us prove our track record a year from now. But I literally look back and go, oh shit, this is a whiskey bar? Like, I had no idea.
Sure.
Like,
It says a lot about my hiring, too.
Yeah.
But without exaggeration, I think that we knew that I had a decent skill set, and like if you pointed me in the right direction.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which I've said that my whole life. I said I don't think it's as much about college degrees as much as I think anyone with a level head could do really well at most jobs if guided the right way.
Well, and I think I track that line. I've got a master's in finance and marketing, and that just sits in the back right now.
Sure.
But it was
Not
funny.
anymore.
It's coming handy.
Yeah, every once in a while it's coming in handy. But like without exaggeration, I knew like Maker's Crown, Gem, Jack, and then we started having conversations. And again, give credit where credit is due. Mike's the one that taught me nosing and tasting and all of that. And then really having conversations with Jace is what got me to love whiskey. And then going in and out of the bar business and still coming back, I always just came back to Reserve. So I would say, like, when did we want to own Reserve? Probably day one.
Day one.
When was it realistic for us to have a conversation? More recently, for sure. But like the conversation that we've always had about Reserve is kind of what you've been hitting on. Is Reserve has always been a one-trick pony, admittingly, and like that one trick that we do is arguably top. We're in your short list of if you're going to go drink whiskey, if you're from out of town and you're coming to Houston, you're going to us, Poison Girl. I mean, there's definitely a short list, and we should be on it. But the problem was that one trick that we did was always the showcase, and that was it. Like we had 300.
There needs to be more, yeah.
Yeah, and the secret is out that whiskey is in. So the problem that we saw halfway through this was, okay, we have 340 marks back there, right? Well, of those 340, there's like 20% that people are touching. And of that 20% that people are touching and asking for all the time, the usual suspects, anything from Buffalo Trace is always going to get called on. But like,
sure,
we never had the conversation of, okay, this is what you asked for. We're in a space to give you that, but here's a lateral move. If you like this, then let's introduce you to some stuff that you're not going to get at the Four Seasons across the street from us.
Sure.
So part of the conversation for us was, where do we go from here? And that we were always here when it came to whiskey, and everything else was here, and it didn't matter because everyone was so excited about our whiskey. Well, now everyone's here.
Sure.
So now now we need to not forget that
need more substance.
Cocktails matter, and substance matters, and experience matters. Besides just look at everything that we have on this back shelf, it's better than everybody else.
Sure.
We can't rely on the whiskey drinkers to drag their girlfriends and drag their non-whiskey drinking friends to a place that really has nothing for them.
Sure.
I mean, we've updated our beer menu. We brought on Josh Alden, who's a prolific cocktail maker around the city, to vamp up our cocktail program. We've kind of tried to change the aesthetic so it's more inviting and something you kind of want to sit and hang out at for a little while. Just to we want to be all inclusive again, and make sure that the wife that doesn't drink whiskey drags her husband who loves whiskey out to Reserve because she loved the cocktails she got. I mean, and that's in striking that balance. And we've played it safe, if you will, with our whiskey game, just kind of relying on that. That's been the stilt that we've had forever.
And at one point in time, the city was sufficient enough. Mm-hmm. But
Absolutely.
now you've got the average consumer has now, a lot of them have what most bars have in their home.
Yep.
They need something a little more. So I'm paying attention to it. The question, when did you guys close? Like, when was this yours? What date?
Last year.
Right. So I didn't know exactly when the date was because it seemed like if it was this year, it was a horrible business decision because of coronavirus. It just shut everybody down.
Funny you should say that.
Yeah. So I will tell you a funny story about that, and this is kind of.
It's funny now.
No, it's still not funny as we're still closed. And this is kind of pulling behind the curtain, and sure, we can have that conversation. It was like, so we purchased the in-game purchase was Q3 of last year.
Okay.
And part of the conversation internally with us was the same thing that we kind of just told you, was what we wanted to do with Reserve is not what it is today, but the potential of what it always could be.
Sure.
And that is, we needed to change quite a bit about it. It's change the culture internally. We needed to do things that move the needle for us, not only in whiskey in Houston space, but also like, how can we move the needle financially for this business to be more profitable?
Sure.
But how can we move the needle in how we are seeing how the people that work for us internally are seeing the people that are coming in, let's say the HBS guys, like those people that come in, we need to be friends with those guys. And also the inverse of that is we need to know how we can move the needle in people that see us, look at us, see us differently, if that makes sense.
In short, you're saying we need to be human. We need to be humanized, and our customers need to be humanized, and we just need to be good to them, and they'll be good to us. Yeah,
a lot of the things that needed to change, I think, was just the culture of what we were doing there,
Sure.
And it's not hard for us to argue that we're a great whiskey bar, but like, and also speaking right now in like the pandemic that we're all living in, like we took over that bar last year. We didn't want to make it public until we had a chance to put our fingerprint on it.
So was this before or after Mike was on my show last? Because I knew it was kind of up in the air, but I think he was
Let's say around October.
Okay.
So if it was prior to we took over around October.
Okay.
And part of that conversation was like, let's not make that public information until we've had our chance to put our fingerprint on it. Because when we took it over, it's, we've been there 13 years, and it looked and smelled and tasted like a 13-year-old bar. So let us change that up a little bit. Yeah. And then some. Yeah, we trust us. We were behind the bar. We know exactly what it smelled like and whatnot. But what we wanted to do is actually be able to turn that into and again, no disrespect to Mike Raymond, but this is not Mike Raymond's Reserve 101.
Sure.
This is now the
like
new.
the saying of the bar, it's not your dad's.
Yeah, this is not your dad's whiskey bar.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that is exactly when you walk in there,
Sure.
not only is it your dad's whiskey bar, it's your grandfather's whiskey
Right.
bar. And like young kids are drinking this stuff now.
Sure.
Young enough kids are drinking this stuff now. And it's significantly more inclusive now. So like for us to have that elitist mentality of like only the guys that know the mash bill and we're going to do the scorecard of this and that, like that's important to us. But the experience for us, I think, is significantly more important. Like I'm not
the guy ordering a
Sure.
Makers and Coke or something.
Sure. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we're in that we're in a transitional bar, and that we're going to be the place you go to before or after dinner at one of the spots across the street, or we're before or after Rockets game. So we get a crowd that one is going to want some of this unicorn whiskey, which we're still going to have.
House of Blues.
Yeah, but we're also going to get the
Before and
person
after.
right.
Before and.
Hopefully, if we play our cards right, yeah. But we're also going to be the place that somebody comes in for a Jack and Coke, and
Sure.
that guy deserves to be sitting right next to the other person just as much, you know. And I mean, we've always had the conversation internally is, you know, this might be blasphemous in this podcast, but like, or in this stream, but like, I can't tell you how many people have come in and been like, yeah, I love whiskey. Great, man. So what's your go-to? And they're like, yeah, well, I love Fireball. That's somewhat cringeworthy for
Sure.
probably the people that are listening here. But like what that says to us is, okay, cool. You're okay with whiskey.
It lets you know exactly
It's
where
a
they're
fork
at.
in the road, and it can
Well-
go one of two different ways.
Sure.
Right. Well, not only does it tell us where they're at, maybe on like this learning curve, but it tells us you're open to it, which is great. Because what we also get is somebody saying, I don't like whiskey at all. And that's probably because they broke into their dad's liquor cabinet and got Cutty Sark when they were like 16 years old. Nothing against Cutty Sark, but like,
Sure.
if that was your first experience at 16 years old, you're probably going down a path that you didn't enjoy. So if you're telling me that you're okay with Fireball, then at least that starts a dialogue. So that tells me, okay, you like something with a little bit of spice to it, definitely a little bit sweeter. So now we can have a conversation about, let's say, Angel's Envy Rye.
Sure.
So you're still going to get that fire to it, but you're going to get a little
Definitely
sweet.
up a notch, yeah.
Yeah, and so now we can. I'm always of the mentality of like, let's give you what you want first, because that's what we're here for. We're here for the experience, but let's also take this and
Elevate.
take advantage of what we can do here.
100%.
Yeah.
The conversation you have with your friends over whiskey, to me, is a little more important than the whiskey you have in your glass. Like those experiences and those moments are kind of what we're after.
100%.
We're after those moments. We're not. We can put 6,000 bottles in the back bar, but the bottom line is if you come and you drink it and you like it and you sit there and you're quiet and you go home, that's what you can do at every other bar. So our goal and our challenge, if you will, is to create an experience so that you remember that time you had while you were drinking whiskey, as opposed to the whiskey you were drinking while you were in that bar. That's kind of the goal.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I say this all the time. The average consumer buys 1 to 3 bottles a month for their own personal consumption of spirits. Wine is a little more, obviously. But the average enthusiast, the people that are in this culture, these people are buying 1 to 3 bottles a week.
Right.
They're buying sometimes a case a week. You guys did I can't wait to taste it. And in fact, my glass is empty, so we can start pouring now. But
That was a great time.
we did a partnership with. Do you mind if I?
Yeah, go ahead.
please.
Sorry, I
With
should've
Brown
cracked
Foreman, and if I can get this off, Mike. You guys, this was the last barrel. So last time Mike was on the show, he said that our barrel released first.
Mm-hmm.
The day before we picked our barrel, the Bourbon Hounds also did a pick.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but Mike actually tasted them first before anyone else. He got the first set of rye samples in Texas. Oh man. And I've been a big Jack Daniel's rye fan. Shout out to Jamie Bell and
Right.
Dana Boardley. But you guys launched this past week at Tony K's in Houston.
We did.
And dropped at a few other places around town.
And again, thank you guys for.
sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Happy to help. Happy
Yeah,
to
I mean,
help.
It was good
We
to meet
had,
a lot of the guys that came out.
Yeah, we had a great experience being able to drop it.
Oh, baby.
Yeah,
The nose on
nice,
this
right?
is insane.
So, we had a great opportunity to go out there. Like, we had a really good amount of people that showed up for it being a pandemic, for it being this was the day that the hurricane was supposed to land there, and we still had a really good group of people that showed up there. And quite honestly, a lot of that we tried to talk to as many people. I think I told you this. Like, we tried to talk to as many people as we could. Some of them were introducing Reserve 101 for the first time, and this single barrel. Some of them introducing ourselves, but a good majority of those people that came out were from y'all's group. So we appreciate the support you guys have been showing for us as well.
We actually met a couple guys. I don't mean to interrupt you. We met a couple guys that had just moved here, and joined Houston Bourbon Society, and that's been their way to like meet people in the city. Like one of the first gentlemen that we spoke to came in. He was like, "I just moved here. I found a Houston Bourbon Society was a group that like-minded people, and I came here because of that." And he's literally just kind of, I mean, it's a rough time to move to a new city,
Sure.
I assume. I mean, nobody's out, nobody's around.
It's a rough time for a barrel drop.
Right?
It's a rough time to buy a bar.
Yeah. So it was really cool. It was cool to see that he was kind of using that. It was good to meet those guys. They were, we look forward to having great relationships with everybody in that group. I mean, everybody loves whiskey. There's no.
Yeah, it comes down to, and don't get me wrong, there's tons of headaches.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And everyone at every level, whether you're a member or an admin or dealing with your own set of headaches from this type of exchange, but the overall net positive is undeniable, in my opinion. And the only time it drives me nuts is when people within the industry don't see the net positive.
Mm-hmm.
And only want to focus on the headache of dealing with the consumer. You've dealt with these people for years behind the bar.
Right.
The idiots.
That was part of our conversation was
the
yeah.
freaking drunks.
I mean, both of us came from high volume nightclubs and whatnot, and so did he. It's a funny story. Like, one of the very first bars that I tried to go and work at in Houston. What was the name of that place? Venue. Were you the GM? That you were the manager over there?
One of the managers. Yeah.
So one of my first interviews was with him before I ever broke into Houston. I came from the Clear Lake area, and I started.
Same.
Did you? Okay, yeah. So I started at Rock Newton's, if that ages me.
Okay.
If that gives you a timeline of that.
No, I'm
right
not
above
familiar
Scout
with
Bar.
Okay, I'm familiar with Scout Bar.
Yeah, so above that, that's been 10
Doc's
different-
Upper Deck was.
Yeah,
was
so
what
before that
before.
it was Rocks, and then before that was Rock Newton's. So I started there. I started working the door there when I
50
was
Cent
like.
Wells.
It was
I'll
it was
never forget.
Yeah, it was
bad happened that night, I'm sure.
everything bad happened. That night.
Behind that building was what do you call it? A sloped ditch, a cement sloped ditch.
Oh yeah.
A vomit ditch?
Oh, that's exactly what it was.
There was
I'm
people-
just going to lay
people-
down for a minute. Let me just
I'll
lay
be
down
there for a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lay
morning.
down, like facing down the slope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leg wrap
Yeah,
would work.
that's where I started a long time ago. So long story short, I ended up making my way into Houston, and he was the first interview that I did. And at that time, like, I'd already put myself through college bartending, and he came to me, or my undergrad, and he came to me, or I interviewed with him, and he goes, at the end of the interview, he's like, "You're not good enough yet. Come back to me when you have more experience."
Oof, brutal.
I stand by it.
Cut to now we're the owners of a bar together.
Best friends.
Best friends. I was the best man at his wedding. He met his wife at the bar.
I met my wife at the bar.
I was behind.
At Reserve 101?
At Reserve 101.
He was bartending. I was bartending at the time. Like, I was literally standing with him when she walked in.
So let me hit you with a couple fast
Sure,
questions.
sure.
Did you guys consider a name change when y'all bought it?
We considered it, but the problem is that the legacy is there, and as soon as we change the name, we run into the possibility.
You're starting over.
Yeah.
That the people don't
500.
assume that we're going to carry on any part of it. If we're willing to change the name, which is the most recognizable part of it, aside from the whiskey program, it was a conversation we had several times and kind of went back and forth with it. But I think that one thing that Reserve never ever even scratched the surface of is branding, and I don't think that there was any kind of
outside.
I wouldn't give you that.
Outside of being known as whiskey.
well, in terms of like how many Reserve 101 hats have you seen? You ever see a shirt?
Oh, okay. That's fair.
You know what I mean?
I knew that Mike worked with a PR firm, and that PR firm was big on creating their top 50 list or whatever.
Sure.
But
To answer to the quick answer to your question is we entertain the idea of it. And then you look at how many, if we're just talking about the SEO side of it, there was 500 something articles written about Reserve 101.
Smart.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to jump shark.
100% agree.
Yeah.
It's what we need to do was fix the reputation of what we have.
Fix it from the inside.
As opposed to without even looking at the numbers, assume 50% failure rate on brand new bars. So why would we do that?
And it's not like we came in and saved a bar that was on the way down. Like, I've been there for 12 years. So like I've bled, sweat, and cried in that building more than anybody. So like I've been
That's
a huge
insane.
integral part of building Reserve 101. So like changing the name it would sting a little
bit heartbreaking. Yeah.
And there's no way we would have done it without Jace.
Yeah.
So and we don't have to go too surface with it, but is everything cool with Mike, or did he want to buy? Because I know he was looking at buying it, and when you guys buy it, was it perceived as?
I'll tell you,
taking it from him.
I guess it just depends on who you ask, and it depends on when you talk to him about it. Quite honestly, like, we still have a great reputation with Mike. When we first started taking it over, like, I definitely had some
anxiety.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I've been in, and Jace has been in every role that wasn't owner.
Sure.
So what you don't know, you don't know. And part of the conversations we had were with Mike of like, look, man, we want to continue the reputation of the things that we like about this. We want to continue doing that, and how we do that. Part of that, we're interested in your opinion. Part of that, we have zero interest in your opinion.
Sure.
But we do want, like, Mike was really good at being the guy that that had the trains run on time and show up on time, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So
there's always good aspects, at least in my opinion. And this is going to be a rabbit hole, but in a corporate environment, middle management, anytime someone starts at the bottom as just a worker and becomes a middle management, they always feel the need to change everything. And that's usually a sign of green management skills.
Sure.
The good manager will assess the situation, keep what's good, and fix what's bad.
And there was a lot of stuff that was good about Reserve.
Correct, right. So not just wipe away everything simply because they're no longer in charge or whatever.
Right.
Find what works and keep that, and then change what doesn't.
And that's kind of the conversation that we've had. Is like, what we want to do with this place now is again, keep the guts, keep the ribcage of what Reserve is. A jump-off place for damn good whiskey.
Dude, this Jack Daniel's rye is insane.
It's great, right?
I've talked about this many times. I told them after we did one of these earlier in the year, I said, I want 2 of them this year. If you can give them, I know it depends on allocation.
What did they do? They did 4 or 5 barrels to Texas, I believe.
I don't know, but we Jack Daniel's rye is arguably, them and Russell's Reserve rye are arguably the best current daily rye available in the market. This is just fantastic. The nose on it's great. Everything about this is brilliant. And for those wondering where you can get it, I know there's still some out there. You got Tony K's on the Inner Loop if you're in Houston. First Sip Liquor in LaPorte on the south side. Ryan's Liquor in Spring. And I think there was one other one. Oh, M&R Vintage Park, which is more the
list is on our Instagram.
Yeah. Go to Reserve 101's.
And Anna over there is outstanding. She's a rock star for us. We absolutely love her. But yeah, this is great. 6 to 8 years. I'm never the guy that really wants to go into the mash bill. I'm more about the experience of, like, don't tell me what the numbers are. Tell me, like, how you feel about this stuff.
Sure.
But 70, so it's gonna be 70 rye. You're definitely gonna get that high rye on it.
It's absolutely delicious.
I think it's outstanding.
So Reserve 101 is staying the same. You guys have officially changed the stance on the social media front. Yeah. So I didn't know that you had been there 12 years and you had been around for all of that.
All of it.
So were you there the day that I got all those messages?
Whatever day, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was.
So Frank Krockenberger from Beam, he was like, I was standing right there when I said Yeah, I was so, man, dude, when you want so badly to change a space, and the I call them the old dogs, not as an insult, because Wade's an old dog, and I have a lot of respect for Wade. When the old dogs, it's, they break your heart a little bit.
Of course.
Dude, Mike broke my heart that day, and we're on good terms. Mike's been on the show, and I like the Mike, but I'm sure he'll see this. He knows he broke my heart that day, but it was just this, But I get his frustration. The internet is a dark place.
Sure. With a bunch of keyboard warriors, but like those, but also the way we look at it, if we're just looking at it as a business and as an industry, is those keyboard warriors like whiskey. So
a lot of them have liquid income.
Yeah, so let's listen to what they have to say. It's important for us to be touching markets that definitely weren't included in the past.
Sure.
I think Mike's focus was outside of Texas a lot, which sounds kind of odd. It definitely wasn't Houston, so it's Texas and the surrounding areas. Like we're
great known in Japan.
We've been in some relatively prestigious magazines. One of them, it's a running joke that we have now, is that we got into the magazine that is in the back of the airline seat when you fly from Japan to America.
Really?
Which is great.
Which is awesome.
That's amazing.
But if they're not flying to Houston,
there's people on, like, within 2 square miles of reserve that don't know we exist.
Sure.
Yeah, there's like when we were doing a little bit of that remodel, there was people that were coming from like Four Seasons and One Park Place, and those guys were like, "Man, we love whiskey. Well, we got a whiskey bar. Oh,
You guys
really?
put a bar up here?
When are you guys gonna open that place? No, a decade plus ago.
The problem is twofold. One, we know, you know what it's like. You've worked there 12 years. There is a sense of pride there. You met
Sure.
your wife there.
Sure.
Anyone who opens a bar in any city is usually competing with whoever the big guy is at the time.
Sure.
And earning respect, and that's definitely something Mike was big on. Like,
Sure.
This is the top 50 bars of America. I think at one point in time, Reserve 101 won the number 1 bar in America.
It was 2014. If it wasn't number 1, it was.
We got a gold.
Yeah. So it's great, and you've got the
Those awards,
award,
that
and
Whiskey
you've got the respect. But if you're not collecting money,
if you're not doing something that resonates with the people, then it doesn't necessarily matter. Like, I'm big into like the cocktail game as well. So like, you know, I was talking with him about it 2 years ago. Just going out, and you have to know what your competition is like, seeing what all is happening. So going out to some of these bars out in New York, like the Employees Only, the Death and Co's, PDTs, all those guys, Dead Rabbits, amazing bars. But that being said, like, I put those guys on such a pedestal for what they are. And then you actually go to them and you're like, there's a little bit of nothing against any of those bars. I think they're all great. But the problem is then you're like, oh man, these guys are bars. Like, at the end of the day, they're bars. And then I went to a place like Katana Kitten in New York, and Katana Kitten is like a bartender's bar, which is great. Or like Nickel City in Austin, it's a bartender's bar. Like, it's a fun bar to go to.
Sure.
So like, it doesn't matter the amount of awards that we get, or the nominations that we hope to get, or if we get any of these, you know, these crystal plates on the back bar. None of those matter if nobody shows up. So like, what our new goal for sure is we're going to make this a fun environment that just so happens to have the best whiskey program in Texas.
super exciting. So you guys are changing your cocktail, becoming more cocktail focused. Still laying heavy on the whiskey.
Heavy.
Still expanding that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we
If not
adding?
heavier.
I know that there was some.
We got to double down on it, to be honest with you.
There was some brands that you didn't see in Reserve 101. We don't have.
There were some brands
Yeah. Past
not allowed
tense.
in Reserve 101.
Yeah,
So-
those guys are back. That was part of one of our concerns as well, was internal relationship building, because this wasn't our bar for 13 years, but also rebuilding relationships because this wasn't our bar for 13
Sure.
years. And those people have definitely come back in droves.
Almost out of the woodwork. Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
The day
Yeah.
when your phone blew up, our phone blew up the same way. And then the next day was all of the people that we thought for sure were never going to talk to us again. We're like, what can we do
What can
for
we
you?
do? The amount of
Yeah.
support that we've gotten within the industry, I think, is outstanding.
Well, I think
It's definitely humbling. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
the outreach has been absolutely spectacular.
I think it's interesting.
love this.
Of course I'm glad. Let me find the right words for this, and maybe Jack can clean this up a little bit. I have so much I'm trying to think and not.
This might be a
I didn't know if you were
two-part.
talking about this.
This might be a two-part
This might be
conversation.
true. This is a really good whiskey. Yes.
We'll have this podcast, and then we'll go have lunch and have another conversation.
I'm glad to see a lot of these brands back. It is something. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So, the one thing I have learned is that as big as a city as Houston is, this community is still fairly relatively small.
And everybody talks.
People know your name.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of who you are, people know your name, and if you're a piece of shit, everyone knows you as a piece of shit.
Sure.
There's the one thing I have learned while trying to build the social and build HBS and try to keep the community happy and loving each other is not to burn bridges.
100%.
And it's so hard not to. Because there's someone I know of, and his name comes up. He is a horrible person, and he's been in this industry for a long time. And I have to constantly.
Pour me more of this.
I'm not going to mention his name. I'm not going to mention his name. But he used to work at the distributor, moved to a supplier role, and then I just pulled my hair out the moment I thought I didn't have to deal with him anymore. And then he became a supplier, and it's like, God, I freaking can't stand this guy.
And those people I feel like those people are on all levels, and you're going to find them. So
Three people came to your mind when I was saying that. You already guessed who I was saying.
Yeah. I mean, what I think that what we've been able to do for sure in this very short interim of what we've done is it's amazing of us just being nice and trying to be like, I'm not trying to be all woo woo about it, but like, the amount of people that have come out of the woodwork, if not just because we've been super easy to deal with, and like at the end of the day, like you touched on in the beginning, like we're the front line of your product. So this is a two-way street. Like, how do we get your product here if we don't have if we can't have a two-way dialogue? Sure. And in the inverse of that is if you can't talk with us, then how do we move your product? You know what I mean?
There definitely needs to be a two-way dialogue in all levels of this, and I think a lot of times within this industry specifically, a lot of people with any remote sense of, I'll say, power, are quick to cut things off. Yeah.
On a scale of let me ask you this: on a scale of 1 to 10 of all your podcasts and streams, I don't know how many.
This is not even close to the most controversial. And I think
I'm going to ask how on a scale of 1 to 10, where does this land diplomatic speaking?
So I will say this: I feel like we have been very diplomatic, but very honest.
Yeah. Sure.
There have been worse things said on this show that resulted in zero backlash, and I think a lot of times what happened
was that Minnick on it?
No. A lot of times people, especially in this industry, you're so nervous to have an honest, candid, because these conversations are happening, just not in front of a camera.
Sure. Absolutely.
But if they happen between us, and then I leave your place and I go to the next place, and I'm like, dude, you got to see what's happening over here. It's the conversations are still happening.
Sure.
Us cutting out a middleman and having an honest conversation in front of a camera is what we're already doing, just cutting out a middleman.
Well, that's what we've been trying to do, not trying to bring it back to like a come see reserve, but like that's part of the conversation that we've been trying to have is an honest conversation of where we've done good things, but also, where have we failed? And that's, I bring that up to a lot of people. It's like, where have we dropped the ball and where can we move the ball forward?
Sure.
If that makes sense.
I'm very, very happy to see the place get saved. Not that it was failing, but that it continues on.
Especially in this timing wise.
Dude, if you guys can ride out the next few months.
Well, that's the good and the bad for us. Is like right now, it's a unique space, in that I can tell you, I can't tell you anything because I have no idea what the future is going to be holding, especially with the mandates that they're doing with us as 51%ers. But like we're in a great space in that we know that, we're going to survive this. Financially, we know that we can outlast everything that's going on right now. So actually we're kind of in a good space in that we know that like if somebody sends us an allocated list, whoever our Class Bs are, like right now it's a conversation with us. If you send us your allocated list, the answer is yes. What do you want off of it? Yeah. I want all of it.
The list.
Yeah.
This could be a good time if you've got the funds to build up that back bar.
Right. Exactly.
To work on the cocktail program, to work on the digital menu thing, to work on all the nitty gritty stuff.
Sure. Of course. If we made the mistake we would make, the only thing that we can do right now is not make mistakes. And by that, I mean like, it's a terrible time to have bought a bar. Hands down, but like the analogy,
possible.
You know what's worse than buying a bar right now than buying it just before it?
Yeah,
because you're all excited and your dreams
super
have been made, and then all of a sudden you find out.
I'll tell you a funny story. I know that you kind of touched on this earlier, but like so when you were asking about timeline and
the date,
So without exaggeration, like we bought it last year and close to the end of last year, and then we went and did our own MB because we didn't want to be attached to. We did an asset, not an entity. And getting an MB or mixed beverage permit liquor license basically takes a little while to do.
Sure.
And so within that time, we were basically working within an interim management agreement. And the day that we got our liquor license, which made it 100%, we are in the reins of this charging horse, was on March 16th, which is the day that they shut down every single bar. So without exaggeration, like we shut down. We went home, and I opened my email, and I sat there. I poured a glass of whiskey because that's what you do. And then I opened my email, and without exaggeration, the first email that popped up was, "Congratulations, you've been approved for your mixed beverage permit." So I literally called him up, or I FaceTimed him and figured out how to FaceTime, and then FaceTimed him and said, "Hey man, what are you doing?" With a couple friends, I said, "You should definitely pour some whiskey out for yourself right now, and let me read you this email." And literally the day that we were 100% in control of this was the day that all bars in the world has just crashed.
But next year we're going to blow this year's sales out of the water.
Yeah. Next year you got a lot of potential. Yeah. Very positive.
This was that year.
That's my role in this whole thing.
It's what a year to have been taking the reins of this. Is like, my first time to y'all's Whiskey Social was last year.
Oh, you went?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's great.
When we were asses to elbows.
Yeah.
How are we going to do that in February?
I have no idea. I have no idea. That's what I was going to ask you. Is like, where does that land? And like, same thing. Like, this is going to be the year that we were going to go out to Vegas for their convention. This is going to be the first year that
or whatever it's called.
And then same thing. Like, we were going to bring some of our bartenders to Tales. Tales should be happening right now-ish.
Yeah.
So like, and Tales is doing some cool stuff. They're doing Tales of the Cocktail. They're doing all their stuff online.
Sure.
But like, yeah, I don't know where the rest of this is going to go. I know that people are going to come back, and I think they're going to come back in droves. So our goal.
It'll pass. Yeah,
of course.
Just win is what's completely up in the air.
Yeah, people are definitely creatures of habit, And we saw that when we did get to open for the small amount of time. Those people showed up, and they're ready to have a good time. And it wasn't that they were ready to show up and take shots. It was they were ready to be like, "Hey, man,
be outside.
I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see you." Like,
sure.
This is one of the few times that I've got to have a conversation with real people outside of like Zoom calls.
Sure.
So thank you for this.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
But just to go back real quick, one of the best parts of this horrible time being when we got the bar and when we got shut down. William Price Distillery, who I know you know friends over there.
Brian Clary, they've been on the show.
Brian and Zach, they have employed our entire staff. It just kind of happened to be that way. Everyone from my wife all the way down to our employees. Thank you.
Do I know your wife?
Melissa VanHoozer.
I don't remember if I knew her name online. Yeah.
Yeah, but she started as a sales manager there.
That's
our
me.
other two
That's
bartenders. Whoops. Our other bartenders also there. One of them is a warehouse manager. One is the office manager, and so we have a very small staff, all of which now work there. So like between our ability to kind of buy some of the allocated products to kind of having to wait this whole thing out, it is horrible of a situation as this is.
This one,
it couldn't be a better situation as we're waiting for this horrible situation to go over.
Super tobacco heavy. Sorry.
This is the one?
I swallowed it and it caught me off guard. It's like cigarette. It's like a cigarette ashtray in the best possible way.
I'm in love with that. I love stuff that's just like kind of off-brand. Give me,
I agree with you completely.
And Brian and Zach are killing it. The way that they postpone their entire distillation process just to get sanitizer out there is absolutely. They're donating to all the front lines. So I can't say enough about them. They stepped up, especially from a Houston community.
Back end.
Yeah, they've gone above and beyond to make sure that there's bartenders that have jobs. They handed out the cocktail to go kits. I don't know if you saw that.
Yep.
I just thought that was a super classy move, considering like they've been at our bar for the brief stint that we were able to kind of toy with being open for a little while, and Brian specifically was at our bar several times asking what he can do for us, and like they don't even have a spirit for us to buy yet. So I found that to be just a really good mark on their character.
And the entire industry has really reached out to us, but like he's definitely been he's been the front runner of like, what can we do?
Yeah. Brian and Zach have been longtime HBSers. Brian helps out with the Whiskey Social every year. William Price Distilling has always been just the most homegrown, down to earth, great guys. They came on the show, and if you knew how much money. And there's a lot of zeros into what they were raising to start their distillery. For them to start
we have a general idea.
We do have a general idea.
We've had that conversation over some good whiskey.
And then not getting to actually distill whiskey and putting things on hold, I feel for them.
And kudos to those guys for pivoting whenever they did.
Thank you guys so much for coming. What a great opportunity to meet you guys. What a great way to break the ice. Man, this felt great.
Yeah,
you guys have to come back.
Definitely. We'd love to come back for sure.
And
so much more to talk about.
Let me know the moment you open, because we will promote the shit out.
I love it.
All right?
We will. We hope to see you.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Balcones' first ever year-round bourbon was an inspiration. It all had to work together. A blend of carefully selected ingredients, Texas-sized pot stills, and creative people determined to find the absolute best way to usher a new whiskey along. When you discover how it pairs with a meaningful moment, suddenly the feeling of drinking great whiskey becomes a whole lot more.